Okay, I better take attendance here. Hold on just a second. So our first answer was just a bunch of things that are coterminal. Our second problem, we'll need to have a new circle to draw this on because this becomes super critical. You have to be able to draw the pictures in the right quadrants, and it's always going to start with this and this. And I suggested you put ASTC on from now on. Why? Well, because in problems like the blue one at the bottom, you'll need to know where sign is negative, for example. Otherwise, you can't be in the right place. So, all right, so back to sine of 11 pi over 6. Basically, this is where 11 pi over 6 is. And if you got lost on that, start with 1 pi over 6. And then count it up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pi over 6, right? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then if you get to like 11, then just change it to 12 pi over 6 in your head and go, oh, okay, so it's just one short of the whole circle all the way around. And so that's how you can kind of talk yourself through a tough one. Find, if it's like pi over 4, find 1 pi over 4 and then count it up until you get to the right spot. All right, now I'm going to draw a triangle. And now I'm going to say that this triangle has 30 here. And even though you are getting better at radians, you'd never call it the pi over 6, pi over 3, pi over 2 triangle. You'd call it the 30, 60, 90. All right. Next, did I say it had to be in a unit circle? No, I didn't. So that means we can just use the standard ratios, which is 1, 2, and the square root of 3. Could you have divided everything by 2? Yes, but you don't have to because it didn't say unit circle. So then now, at the end, I got to know which angle stands in for the sine of 11 pi over 6, and that's this 30 here, the central angle, also known as the reference angle. And then sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so it's 1 over 2, and I just about made the most common mistake in circle trig. Francis Pham, what do you see as possibly a trap?
You missed the negative.
Yep, right here, there's a negative on that 1. So I'm going to squeeze it in, make it small negative on the 1. I'm just going to erase, start over. Make that a nice, clean -1. Okay, so now, what's the sine of 11 pi over 6? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. 1 over 2, but it's negative, so -1/2. Put your virtual hand up if you had that one right. Excellent. And now the last one. All right. Sine of -7 over 25. No, sine of the angle is -7 over 25. And I hope right away you wrote ASTC. And I hope right away you went, okay, sine's negative. So I can't be here and I can't be here. It does say it's in quadrant 3. Okay, then that rules out this one, which would have normally worked, but it has to be in quadrant 3. So I draw my triangle. Always start from the center, go to the circle, make it ambiguous. That's actually a little too skinny because I don't know what its angles are yet. So I'm going to just make it more of a fat triangle because then it's easier to believe whatever angle sizes you write in. All right, now and the lengths of the sides also are a little more believable. If you have one really tiny side and you have to label it with like 25, you'll be all confused. All right, so sine of this angle is opposite over hypotenuse. And, oh, it's a negative, and that makes sense because it's going down. So, yay, I've got it. I just got to figure out the last side. This is a classic. The other day I just left it as a square root. Does anybody know what side length that is? The third side of this? Did anybody figure it out? It is. Very nice. It's a square root of some strange number, but it turns out to be just 24 because this is called a Pythagorean triple. 7, 24, 25. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. You don't see this one that often, but you see it. Okay, now I know all three sides. And I've said this to you a bunch of times. If you got the triangle drawn in the right spot and you got all the sides, and sometimes you'll have all the angles. In this case, we could find them. We could use, our rules about trig to find the angles, but that's not what they wanted. They didn't want the angle. They wanted tangent of the angle. If they had just asked for theta, they would have been talking about the central angle, and we could have found it with trig, but they want tangent of it. So TOA, opposite over adjacent, opposite side from the central angle, which is right here. Opposite from that is -7 over adjacent is -24, and the negatives cancel, and it'd be 7/24. How many of you got, or see how I got 7/24? Now I heard a voice, but I couldn't tell if somebody was trying to catch a mistake I was making, or if they have a question, or who knows. Any questions? Look this over. Do you understand how I got it? If you have a question, this is a good time to ask one, because we're going to have a quiz as your homework for tonight. It's like, up to now, here's everything you learned, and here's a quiz. It'll get graded in class tomorrow, kind of like we're going to grade the lab today. Well, alrighty then. So I think this next part, because I want your, I think we need to get the lab done next. So everybody pull up your lab. Now there's a few people who didn't do the lab. And man, I gave you quite a bit of extra time and extra chances to do it. So I guess you're just going to sit there today. And if everybody hasn't already turned in the lab, you need to turn it in now. What do you mean, turn it in? Because we're going to grade it, Mr. Server. Shouldn't I wait? No. You should turn it in once before we grade it, and then once after we grade it. That'll keep kids from just adding stuff in once they hear, oh, you wanted that? Well, maybe I'll give myself credit for that. Well, I'd be able to see what you had before we graded it. Okay, it looks like it deleted my voice. I don't know, did I tell you to take out the lab yet when it started muting me?
Yeah, no, you hadn't yet.
Okay, so everybody take out the lab. Did you hear the answer for this question? This is so annoying. Did you hear the answer for this question was 7/24? Okay. And I basically offered, if you have any questions, you can ask questions. And then I started talking about the lab. All right, so if you haven't already Dropboxed the lab, you need to Dropbox it now, because we're going to grade it and then Dropbox it again. And I'll be able to compare your before we graded it lab with your after we graded it lab. And if you've changed a bunch of stuff to try to get credit, obviously that'll be cheating. Okay, so don't change anything while we're grading the lab. You're just grading it now. Okay? And Elias, I did see your note in the chat, and yes, I marked you present, so you're fine. All right, so.
It's the height of the tree lab, right?
Yes, we're doing the height of the tree lab. So I know you haven't done this before, but well, I shouldn't say that. Some of you were with me first semester, and you did grade one by yourself first semester. And here's how this is going to work. We're going to be checking for certain things in the grading of the lab. And I'm going to stop the video at this point because what we're going to do after this grading of the lab is go over the answer key for the last test. So those are things I don't want recorded. And so that's all I have for today. If you're listening to this because you missed today, the only thing you have for homework is the quiz. It's called 12.1, 12.2 quiz, and it's in the folder called March 3rd. And I'm not opening it yet for those of you listening to me live in person here because I want your attention while we're grading the lab. So